Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic Podcast. I have one of my this guy's channel has become one of my favorite YouTube channels. He covers such a wide variety of topics, kind of like me, but it's a little bit different. We were almost talking about it. It's not really conspiracy based. It's more like deep occult and esoteric knowledge. So I'm proud to present Juan Ayala. He's a researcher, podcaster, studier, deep thinker, I would say. And I'm going to start off by showing his channel here. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Wait, or why isn't it? Oh, here it is. Okay, boom. Okay. So this is the one-on-one podcast, and Juan's been on my show before. So, like, what I notice about your work, man, is like you. First of all, you have amazing artwork, but then it's not just the artwork. It's like the content that you cover is amazing as well. Like, you go into Kenneth Grant, occulted gods, the homunculus. I see you have members only content. I saw you have Robert Sullivan on there recently. You have a lot of people like Donut and but like what were you but so first of all, I'm sorry, I didn't welcome to the show, Juan. Thank you for coming back on.
Thanks for having me back on, bro. I had fun last time. And I'll put this out on my feed too. Where can people find you, bro? So they can check you out too.
Just typical skeptic podcast everywhere. My main two right now, I'm on Rockfin, but I really am focusing on building YouTube and Rumble. You know what I mean? Like Rumble more so because I feel like Rumble's the future. Because sometimes I touch into stuff where I can't put it on YouTube. It has to go on Rumble. So, I have like 14,000 subscribers on YouTube. I have 1,000 on Rumble because some people don't want to like jump over there, and I don't understand why. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, but what I love about your content, getting back to your stuff, is you cover stuff that you can pretty much all talk about on YouTube. So,
Sometimes.
yeah, yeah. So, are you on Rumble as well?
I am. Yeah, I think I have about the same amount of subscribers on there. But the thing is, dude, it's like, this is what and I told you this too when you had shot me that email a little bit ago, where, a lot of people want to go live on YouTube and do all these things on YouTube. But the thing about YouTube is it's highly censored. Okay. And the problem with YouTube, the other problem is that it's where the people are at. So you have to adjust the content. Either you can flat out censor it, which is what I've been doing. I've been doing the uncensored versions on Rumble, like straight up uncensored. And then the censored versions that don't pass the YouTube checks, I have to censor them. And people complain about that, but it goes, this is what you agree to by partaking and being in this platform, on this platform. And the way I see it, bro, is I can still put the content out on this platform that's highly censored, except you have to occult, right, or encrypt some of the wording or some of the words or whatever in the video. That's just like we're back to how the alchemists were trying to occult their knowledge back then in these pictures and in these books, that they would just, only the ones that knew about what they were talking about were the ones that understood what was trying to be portrayed. And people will make fun of me all the time, like, oh, you're bending the knee, you're doing this and that. I go, no, I think it's kind of smart where I can exist in an ecosystem where has the most amount of people in it, and I can still put my content out, albeit it might be censored. But hey, if you want to check out the uncensored, go over to Rumble. You can still understand it even with one or two words that have been taken out. Those key words that really kick off the algorithm and put you on their radar. So there's just a way to go about it. And again, that was what I was telling you about with like the whole conspiracy realm. There's just so much stuff on there that I and I wouldn't say I started off as a quote unquote conspiracy theorist. I started more with how you're saying, like the occult. I started with Gnosticism, like the religious aspect of it all, because some of these conspiracy theories, bro, like I can't even get behind them. And my sort of topics, they kind of parallel sometimes. Some of them could be conspiracies, like, hey, what's all this occult knowledge that they were trying to hide? That's the conspiracy. Like, was there even occult knowledge, bro? Was there even something that they were trying to hide from the uninitiated? Like that we can conspire and think about that, right? Like that's a conspiracy, right? They were conspiring together as a group to withhold information, but some of these other freaking conspiracy theories, bro, like, I don't know. I've heard some really wild ones, but I just think it's like mental masturbation, dude. They just like to think in circles sometimes, and I, I'm not here for a lot of
Where
that.
do you draw the line with conspiracies? I was going to say, I think there definitely was like a cult or hidden knowledge. Because, like, even if you look at like something like the serpent knowledge, for example, which, they say the serpent knowledge was handed down from Enki to Thoth to like mystery schools. And then so it went into Egypt, but like only certain people knew about it. And then if you look at even like somewhere where the people go, like the way, if you want to talk about like a conspiracy, there's like the World's Fairs, right? Where it seemed like only the people that were around that time that were like the teachers and professors were allowed to learn that knowledge, that what people were learning at the World's Fairs, and then they would come and tell it to the rest of the people, if we want to believe that. But so I don't know, but where do you draw the line on like conspiracies? Where does it go too far for you, would you say?
So there's the one with the all women in Hollywood are trans, right? And then I saw one time like The Rock was actually a woman to man, I guess conversion. I don't know what you want to call it, but that The Rock was actually a woman turned to a man. I'm like, come on, like yeah, that's crazy. And the whole thing with like Tartaria and the old world, like I like that. And I think what draws people into that sort of thinking is like we know that the uh, Rockefeller educational system is corrupt. We know that they've been lying to us about a lot of things. Now, my whole thing with Tartaria is, which I would even, I've gotten slack for this, lump it in with Atlantis, like a lost civilization, a lost advanced civilization. Well, that's Atlantis. You're just rebranding Atlantis, right? And the whole thing with them, there was this, I think it was, his name is Aor or something, Awar, whatever his channel is, and he showed these demolitions of a lot of these old world architecture, and it was just plaster and like plywood. The walls inside looked like marble, and it was actually wood that was painted to look like marble. And I'll get a lot of slack for this, but the thing is that and it's a two-edged sword, we're relying on a lot of pictures, videos, things that we can't physically inspect for ourselves. Now, they demolished it on purpose so we wouldn't know the truth. Yes, but the problem with that is that we're back to like ancient times where like the homunculus, right? This mystery is what really appeals to people. This like, oh, could it be or could it not be type of things. Like the homunculus, could it be a thing or could it not be a thing, right? Like it's like you're teeter-tottering and that attracts people in. But the thing is that we're relying on pure observation. Like you're on Google Earth showing me these old star forts, and then you're gonna, oh yeah, this was built for this. Like, no, you don't know what it was built for, right? Like these people could have built it for whatever, and we're relying on observation. And a lot of Aristotelian biology that they got wrong was fully based on observation, right? So you can't see the curvature of the Earth, therefore it's flat because you're observing, because you can't see the curvature. What's that whole thing? The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, or whatever the saying goes. And it's like, but take me to hollow. I'm not saying that I don't believe the globe narrative. All right. I'm not a flat earther. I'm open to other ideas. But it's like you talk to me about hollow earth, and there's dudes on YouTube going into 200-foot holes into the earth, bro. Like they're like the other night I was watching a video of these dudes going down into this cave system that went from like 100 feet and then another 165. It was like a crazy deep crater, like in this cave system. It's like, you can take me there. I can find that place myself and go into hollow earth. Take me to flat earth. Like take me there. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh no, well, they, the Elon Musk, the firmament, he was clashing into it. No, that's what you're seeing with your eyes, right? Now it's
Can I
not.
tell you something real quick, Juan? I had Brad Olson on my show, and he showed me, he didn't show it through like screen share. He just showed me his phone. Showed me pictures from a boat in Antarctica. And he was like, look, no ice wall. And I was like, okay, if you say so. I mean, like, and I think he's a well-respected researcher, but like that's still taking someone's word for it. But
Yes.
like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure. I'm still like 50-50 on if there's an ice wall or. But what would you think? Do you think that like that like? Do you think sometimes this stuff is thrown into the conspiracy community to cause dissension and cause problems with people, so people argue back and forth?
And that's, dude, you're right on the money, Robert. You don't know, right? I don't know. It's okay to say I don't know, but you got people who will scream to the end of the world, like, I know the answer. There is an ice wall. It's like, what's behind the ice wall? Oh, infinite land. Well, isn't that the same concept as infinite? Isn't space fake and gay? But then you're gonna, how do you, infinite land behind the ice wall for infinity, for forever, but then you won't believe in outer space that goes on for infinity, for forever? What's the difference? Because NASA told you that one was real and the other one was fake. Like, what makes, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're talking about essentially the same concept, infinite something, which should be mind-blowing in and of itself, because only God could be infinite, but yet you won't believe one over the other. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like this whole thing. Now, me personally, I like the whole Admiral Byrd thing after he had passed, the publication that happened after. I don't buy that. The reason I don't buy is because, again, it was posthumously published. You can say whatever. I can write a book about whatever and say whatever. And I'm not here trying to say that I have all the answers. I'm just trying to like pinpoint some of this mental gymnastics, mental masturbation that a lot of conspiracy theorists go through. And like, hey, I'm here to talk about it. I'm here to figure it out. Do I say I have 100% of the answers? Absolutely not, bro. Like, all the topics that I look into them because, number one, I don't see other people talking about them the way that I would like for them to be covered. And I look at them from, again, I present the information and you do with whatever you want with that information. If you want to, I'm not telling you, you need to believe this or you need to believe that. It's like, no, it's like, use your logic. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think that there's been a conditioning. I've been looking into William S. Burroughs these last 3 days, so my mind is kind of mush. But one of the things in the movie Naked Lunch at the very beginning, he's like, exterminate all rational thought. And I think that really pinpoints a lot of what they've been trying to do with us, bro. Like the whole media, the whole Hollywood, all these things are trying to make, how you're saying, maybe that these topics have been planted into the community to divide the community in and of itself, right? Like,
I feel like the same things happen in the UFO community because I have a lot of
100%.
people come on that talk about like disclosure and ufology and the secret space program and like their contact experiences, and then I see people fighting with each other back and forth about whose contact experiences is real, whereas the other ones isn't, but nobody has proof. And then we were like trying to believe the secret space program. I mean, my name's Typical Skeptic on YouTube. I'm skeptical, but I'm open-minded, so I'll let anybody come on and talk about
Yeah.
anything. But I mean, number one, a couple of things, I would love to see some proof if I could. And that doesn't mean I won't have people on my show. I'll still have people on my show. But then secondly, I wish people wouldn't argue, and I wish people would kind of band together over the way we thought about one or two things. Like that would I think we can make it a lot further. And I feel like it's the same thing. They throw misinformation into the community. Then as a researcher, it's hard for you to sift it through what's real and what's not real. It makes things like some things that are actually happening intangible. And
Bro,
it makes things that aren't happening tangible.
I was listening to Valis today by Philip K. Dick, and he talks about, right, the Gnostics and all these groups. And we have this community, quote unquote community. There's a 144, is it 100? No, it's a 44,000 different denominations of Christianity. That's like checked, right? 44. I mean, how many denominations of Christianity? I think it's 44,000. So yeah, 45,000. Okay, so 45,000 denominations of Christianity where they're gonna argue. So let's take this as an example for like the conspiracy community. You're gonna have the people who, and I'd like to get your input on the whole UFO thing because I have my speculations about it, but we have 44,000 different groups that don't agree on one central thing, usually, right? For me, the most confusing aspect of Christianity, I was Pentecostal, a lot of people don't know that. Pentecostal that, right, the Trinity, like that's the most like confusing thing as a child trying to grasp. Like I remember my grandma trying to explain to me, like, well, God is God, but he's also the Son, and then he's also the Holy Spirit. And it's like, wait a minute, so he's like three things in one? It's like, yeah. So who's Jesus? Like, oh, well, he's God too. Then the why is, he's the Son of God. It's like, oh, this crazy concept, right? But you're gonna have people who are gonna pick that apart. It's like God did this on this day or whatever, and they're gonna. So that's how you get 45,000 different denominations. Now think about the conspiracy community, the same thing. Well, the alien grays were actually gay. It's like, oh, well, no, they weren't. They were actually heterosexual because of whatever, like some stupid thing. Just pick whatever it is, how you're saying, and they're gonna argue about that. So my whole thing with like Valis, I was listening to that today, and it's like the especially the conspiracy community, we've become what we were trying to run away from. The Christian faith, right? The church itself imprisoned itself in that Gnostic cosmology that they didn't want, that they were trying to eliminate. So essentially you become the monster that you're trying to destroy. So the Gnostics believe that this was like a false prison planet type of thing, right? Like we're stuck in a simulation type of thing. And at the same time, while the Christian church or Catholicism, whatever it was at the time, was trying to snuff that out, they kind of sort of put people in this sort of like mind prison sort of thing, right? Like this concept of being trapped in your body. Because as a Christian, you're trying to ascend to the next level. You prepare this in this lifetime to prepare for the afterlife. Essentially, is like, well, you're I don't want to say you're wasting all this time, but you're wasting your life preparing for the next one, like the next thing over. And like that was a joke I always made. Like they're so focused on dying that they're not living, right? It's like a kind of paradoxical type of thing. But essentially, it's like the Gnostics were snuffed out, and then the church took over what they were trying to do, in some sort of weird way. So, and with the whole like UFO thing, I've noticed a shift, and I don't know about you, and you can enlighten me because you're more in this realm of things than I am, but I feel like the UFO thing went from being like an actual thing of like little green men or whatever you want to call it to being fake and gay because the government is pushing it. And I'm like, well, okay, let's say that Crowley, right, 1914 or whatever it was when he had the encounter with ayahuasca, right, this extraterrestrial type of thing, and then I think 1917 with Lamb, like this little gray entity. It's like, okay, let's say Crowley was part of the three-letter agency. Let's say that it could have been the government implanting this idea of extraterrestrials, but then that's fine. 1917. What about all those sightings and everything in ancient history before that? Was all that fake and gay? Was all that the three-letter agencies implanting it into the subconscious or whatever of the masses? Because I feel like it went from there's actual entities to, hey, this is just a psyop by the government being pushed. I don't know about you if you noticed that shift or not, but I noticed.
I think there's a lot of reality to everything that's going on. I mean, I think that like, like there's I think there might be some, I mean, it's weird, like people have come out against David Grush, who was the speaker at the UAP disclosure conference or whatever. I'm kind of 50-50 on him, but I've heard the same thing with him. Like people said that he's fake,
He's
or
an
that
idiot, bro.
the government's pushing him for. But then I started thinking about this. I was like, well, why would the government do that? What do they have the benefit about? I mean, like, what do they care? All they want is the technology at the end of the day, and they probably already have that. But I think it's not as easy as we think. I think the people like in the UAP task force have no clue what's going on. There might be like some UFO researchers who know more than them. And then as far as like, the secret space program, I think there's some validity to that, but it's not it's not like the experiencer stories. I think it's more like Gary McKinnon hacked into NASA and he found that, some that we have some that we were saying that we didn't have. And then as far as like, I like to study like the old abduction cases as well, like like where like the old researchers like Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs and stuff like that were when it seemed like the abduction phenomenon was happening, because I think something was happening to that. But I'm not saying it might have been extraterrestrial for sure. I think it might have been more like interdimensional, or it could be anything. Who knows? It could be a construct people are making up with their mind. I'm open to all things. But that's kind of like in a nutshell how I feel about what's going on with the UFO thing. But I'm not, I'm not sure if it's a. I mean, I don't know why the government would do that, right? It doesn't make sense to me, like. Because what they don't care about us, and the government's never cared about us, you know what I mean? So like for them to go out of their way to make up a lie to the community doesn't make sense. You know what
Well,
I
it's
mean?
the same. It's the same thinking as like flat Earth. Why would they lie to you about the flat? Because they want to make you feel insignificant. They want you to not be able to. This the same type of thinking. Like why would they care about us? Like you and I and anyone really listening to this podcast. Bro, I remember reading about the Bermuda Triangle when I was in elementary school. Okay. And like reading about flight 29 or whatever, 19, whatever the flight was, and wondering about alien as a young man, I guess, or a little boy. I was wondering about aliens. I'm about to be 30 years old. And I know for a fact that there's something more than what's being told to us, but I don't give a shit about the Senate hearings. I don't care about any of that. Stop talking. You know what I'm saying? Stop
Yeah.
giving me stories. Give me proof. Like, get us, take. And that's the problem with even today, bro, that even if they were to show proof today, it wouldn't be enough because of everything else that's going on, like the whole AI, deep fakes, all these different things. So even if we were to be given, like right now, the big one is the one where it shows the missing flight and the 3 orbs surrounding it and then teleporting the airplane out and how it was caught on. Have you seen that one? The
No, I was
MH370?
going to ask you your thoughts on the Mexico alien, which was hilarious, but like, I don't know what the hell that was, And then also the attacks in Peru were interesting as well. Did you ever calling them face peelers? That these like predator type aliens were attacking people in Peru supposedly.
But bro, where are the pictures? We're in the 21st century. It's 2023. Let's stop talking and let's start seeing the video. We have so much tech on the ground, bro. And dude, I love cryptids. I love hearing about Dogman. I love hearing about Bigfoot. I love hearing about all this stuff. I love reading about the homunculus, but can I prove that the homunculus was real? Maybe. I mean, they're making people in test tubes and growing lambs in artificial matrices. So there's a possibility that that's real tangible evidence. Like there's scientists where you can go and see them growing these things in these labs. Like that could be proof enough on its own. That's what they're showing us. It's like we talk about Bigfoot, we talk about Dogmen, we talk about aliens, but where's the video, bro? Like the Patterson Gimlin is the best we can do, bro. From the what year was that? From the 60s? Like
Yeah,
that's the
I
best we
know.
can do. And we have literally a supercomputer with us at all times in our pockets. And no one's gonna get a video like the Las Vegas aliens one. They're talking about these arachnid looking aliens on top of the roofs of the houses, and you're not gonna you're gonna tell me, bro. And I'll okay. In defense, when I saw my first UFO and my only UFO, I didn't take my phone out. And I didn't take my phone out because I had other people with me who also saw the UFO.
You got to tell me about that. Yeah,
And
we got to hear that. It sounds interesting.
we know that well, we saw that we know that we don't know what we saw. Therefore, it's a UFO. Okay. And I mean, it wasn't like a crazy story, bro. I was outside. It was a little weird. Okay. So I was outside smoking a cigar, hanging out, right? And I'm thinking about this episode I'm about to do. And let me make sure I pull this guy's let me pull this guy's book up. I was gonna do an episode with what's his name here? Mike Cleland or Cleland. It's Cleland. Mike Cleland, the messengers, owl, synchronicity, and the UFO abductee. And I'm sitting outside, right? And that was the next day. That was going to be the next day or that same week. And I was thinking about it, right? I was thinking about that interview. And I was reading his book. So I was thinking about his UFO and abductee experiences. And it's a story about essentially the owls, right? The owls are not what they seem. That's a Twin Peaks reference, but the owls. And I was thinking about how there's sometimes owls in my backyard, and I'll read late at night, and every now and again when I'm reading something weird like some Kenneth Grant or some weird woo woo type of stuff, I'll hear the owls. They only come out when I'm like reading some like mind-blowing occultish sort of book, right? And I can hear them from my window, like, okay, that's kind of weird. And this night we were sitting out there And I start thinking about the owls and the UFOs. And my son, who is a 5-year-old little boy, he looks up and he goes, "Hey, Daddy, what is that?" My wife is next to me. She also looks up, and it's this orange orb, bro. Right? It's like this ball, this orb. Just wasn't. I was like, when I looked up at it, I'm like, oh, that's a drone, right? Because I was like, okay, orange light, maybe it was a drone, but drones don't have orange lights. Drones usually have like a red and a green light because I have a drone, right? So you have the two flashing lights. And I was like, and if it's a drone, why can't I hear it? So all three of us are looking up at this glowing orb. It was like almost like you could tell it was almost organic in nature, like transparent type of thing, right? It was like and it's just floating along. And it's not like we thought it was like, oh, maybe it's a rogue balloon, right? Like, somebody let off a balloon. It was close to New Year's at that point, right? Or New Year's or 4th of July, one of the two. But I'm like, okay, but it's going too quickly in a straight line. Usually a balloon will, drift up or whatever. It was just going, bro. And we watched it the whole time, probably for a good 30, 40 seconds. We just watched it just zoom on by the house and just disappear into the distance. Like that. I don't, we know that we don't know what it was. Therefore, by definition, it's an unidentified flying object. And that's the only UFO experience I've had where I'm like, okay, that's a UFO. I've seen things in the sky before, but I've seen them in places like Homestead where there's a military base. It could have been a plane, a military plane, whatever it is, but I have seen things in the sky, right, that I don't know what they are, but that was the first time I ever saw something, and I was with other people that could also confirm that we saw something that we don't know what it was, therefore it's a UFO, right? Who knows if me thinking about it manifested it or something, because that was my train of thought as I was outside just hanging out, like, oh, I got this, the Messengers owl book guy coming up, I'm thinking about aliens, I'm thinking about all this crazy stuff, and then boom, my son, maybe with a more hyperactive imagination or something, or maybe he manifested it, who knows, right? I mean, you got guys that talk about manifesting these things, and boom, there it is. What are the chances that I'm thinking about that and we happen to see something of that nature pop up out of nowhere? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have a girl. She comes on my show frequently, or she's come on twice. But her name's Priscilla, and she's from Canada, and she sees them every night. She sends me the videos, and she posts them on her channel as well. They're exactly the same thing. They're what you would definitely call unidentified. They're definitely unidentified. They're weird lights. And they seem to like show themselves to her, which makes me think there's some kind of consciousness there. It makes me think there's a lot more than what we're thinking they are. Then like, why do they keep showing themselves to her? Like, like, that's strange. Like, I don't think it's just military maneuvers or something like that. You know what I mean? I think there's something more to it. But then that's like what I was going to say. It's like when we have this like belief or disbelief, it's like, how much mysticism do you want to accept into your life? Like with the homunculus, I absolutely believe it's real. I believe you can do weird things with alchemy.
I know test tube babies, bro. I know people who were test tube babies. They're like, yeah, I was grown in a test tube before they put me in my mom. It's like, well, that by definition, I mean, we apply Paracelsian principles to that. That's a homunculus. You know what I'm saying? That's a homunculus.
Yeah.
Like that is a real thing you can grasp you could wrap your mind around.
But the homunculus we're talking about is more like mystical, right? Because it's like done with alchemy, and it's a grimoire, and it's like they're doing weird with animals, and like, I mean, that's what I heard you explain it on the Tinfoil Hat podcast. When I heard it, I was like, man, this is some bizarre shit that they were doing back in the day. Like, I don't know if that works, but I know I've messed around with magic before, and I've gotten positive results. And like, I'm not some like witch, or I'm not some alchemist or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, I like, well, the one thing I did, like, I think it was like a year ago, I saw some video on YouTube about a salt spell. I know this sounds hilarious, but it's a salt spell, and you can look it up on YouTube, and you say these things, like, you say like salt of one something something, my spell has begun, and then you put a pinch of salt in after each time you say each word, like, and I can send you the spell, and it worked. Money show after I did it, and all it is you're saying words and putting salt into water. Then you take the water and dump it into a tree. Now, it worked afterwards. Like money did appear, which is strange. Like I wonder if that's like, I wonder how much is in our consciousness and like what we can do with our consciousness that makes these things happen. And this goes back to the homunculus, like, or is it the ingredients and like the combination of the ingredients that make the magic happen? It's so strange to me. I don't know if I'll ever know, you know?
That's the there you go. That's why I love alchemy so much, because it's a topic that you can quite literally spend hours and hours and hours pondering upon, where it's interdimensional, bro. Like the topic is interdimensional. It's like you're working on multiple layers of reality, and then you're able to quite literally dissolve out of this reality into a new one if you wanted to. So that's alchemy in itself, either manipulating symbols on a figurative level and a symbolic level, or a physical literal level, so moving things around. And the thing with the homunculus is, a homunculus could be as simple. You got the Crowleyan moon children, where that's a form of homunculus. He took the concepts of the alchemist and he applied his own principles to it, because a lot of these principles are, I thought I heard some ruckus back here. A lot of these principles are meant to be adapted and changed. So Crowley took his own version of a homunculus and he called it a moon child, right? Where essentially what it is, it's copulating under a ceremonial setting, so sex magic, and invoking the spirit of a deity into this fetus, right? And then that gets into whole, if you want to get into Fritz Springmeier and the whole MK Ultra mind control slave, where it gets into MK Ultra, where they
Can
can
you
take
talk
these.
about that? I don't know much about that. I'm interested.
So Fritz Springmeier is one of these guys that, again, back, I'm not saying I covered it on this show that I have, Occult Book Club number 10. Well, he wrote this book, the how the make an undetectable mind control slave or something or other. And in that, it's a grimoire essentially, and he gives you a breakdown on how the are able to essentially, and it's very dark and very bad, how they're able to take a person and they're able to break them and fracture them to where they're able to house essentially different personalities, right? And they go through, use your mind, the most depraved, darkest things that you could possibly think of is what they do to these people. But that gets into the aspect of the homunculus, because he was talking about how Crowley in his Moonchild book was hinting at how these secret organizations know about the homunculus technology. Now, back again to Crowley, he was part of these 3-letter agencies. As he's talking about the OTO, right? Secret society or secret organization, or is he talking about MI5 or MI6, whatever part? You know what I'm saying? Like, so does the government, because from Moonchild, which is what Crowley wrote about, how to, his grimoire essentially of how to create this homunculus, and for lack of a better term, to house this entity. So they want to take an elemental and give it a vessel. They want to give it a place to inhabit. So they invoke the deity through their ceremony. They build a Pythagorean palace. They invoke the deity into the fetus. It comes in, it grows up to be a regular person, a regular baby, except it has the essence or the spirit of this elemental, whatever it may be. Have your pick. There's multiple different elementals or demonic beings, whatever you want, right? Think of Rosemary's Baby. She's having Satan's son or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Like these same concepts. Mind you, that guy made that movie and he turned out to be accused of whatever it was that he made the movie about. Like that was crazy. Like he went to jail for what the movie was about, or they were trying to imprison him of what the movie was about, which is wild, because it shows you that Hollywood, a lot of these things are biographical in nature. It is real events shrouded in fiction, or right, they based on true events. Well, I think that's what Moonchild was about. Now, if this wasn't meant to be taken literally, you have a guy like Jack Parsons, who was also part of the government, who was the father of rocketry, or who, he was taking these concepts, and with L. Ron Hubbard, they were in the desert trying to do a modified version of Crowley's, I think Alamantra. Amalantra. I always forget how to say it, but one of
They were
his,
trying to perform the sex magic, right?
they were trying to do the Babylon working rituals to invoke the elemental, right, Babylon into existence. Now, some people say that he achieved it. Some people say that he actually did do it, because you have Marjorie Cameron, his second wife, who came into the, she showed up at the lodge, and she was, the Scarlet Woman, right? Who knows? Like, whatever. But point being that a guy, right, like Parsons, let's say that he was as smart as they say. He was literally a rocket scientist, right? It's not rocket science. He was literally a rocket scientist, a very smart individual. Now, if he was tapping into other forces and that they were giving him that intelligence, that's a whole different conversation. But let's say he was as smart as they say he was. Okay. This guy was taking at face value what Crowley was writing. He was quite literally trying to make a homunculus in real life, and that was 19 whatever year it was, like the mid 20th century. He was trying to do this, coming from a rocket scientist. But again, it was based on principles that the alchemists had put out, that Crowley modified, and then from that Parsons took it. Okay.
This sounds like this like relates to like the UFO and time travel stuff too, because if you like think about the Montauk project, I've had people on my show that have supposedly were at Montauk. I mean, I can't verify it or not, but like they talk about how they were severely mind control abused at Montauk, and then their personality split, and they created alters with a personality where they would make the person's alter do time travel experiments or whatever, like, but they didn't know. It's weird, like how they can fracture the mind and create different personalities almost. That's the secret space program too. They do that supposedly as well.
But Robert, same thing. Source, trust me, bro. And that's the thing with Fritz. Like, he's like, oh, I've talked to all these people of this program. Like, I've talked to a whole bunch of people who were in this program, and they were a part of it, and they tell me their experiences. But again, it goes back to, where's the physics? I'm not denying that this doesn't happen. I do believe that certain things happen. Like right now, recently, the whole I'm not gonna say the PIZZA gate type of thing, where the guy who debunked it got charged with what they were debunking, like what they had debunked. And it's like, wait a minute. So there's something to it. There's something there that I believe goes on. We know that Disney and Hollywood and all these people, that those children are groomed, bro. I mean, that's essentially what it is, right? Like, we know that there's bad things going on, but I think the over embellishment of like, oh, what is even the, I feel like if you know the name of a secret society, they're not so secret. Like, Freemasons nowadays, everyone wants to blame the Freemasons. Like, all their stuff that you've ever wanted to know about Freemasonry is in books. I get emails constantly, bro, of people who join these secret organizations and they regret joining. And I'm like, well, what enticed you? And again, it's that, oh, I wanted to learn the secrets. I want to learn the secret knowledge. They promise to, I want, they're so blown up in the media that I want to see what the fuss was all about. It's like, well, now you're part of something that you could have just Google it. Any book that you want is out there. You could quite literally just read what they're talking about. Now, there's something else going on behind the scenes in the lodges. If they're jerking each other off or doing whatever they're doing, behind closed doors, that's a whole nother thing. But it's like, there is no secret, in my opinion, that is worth joining any secret organization, because you can quite literally find it in these things. Now, I am not an occultist, okay? I am an armchair occultist. I research this sort of stuff. I'm not doing a lot of the stuff that I'm researching. Now, again, what I do, I practice like mimetic magic, like dumb stuff. Like, I'll post my video at 1122, right? Because it equals 33. Or I'll, like I told you, I think I told you before, I'll take like my font and like I'll change it to be 33 here or 418 here, like whatever. Like, I'll take these numbers. That's as far as my extent goes in the occult. Like, that's what I'll do. So that's just me. But
yeah, one thing I wanted to say was, you had recently, I think your most recent video, you had Robert Sullivan on. I've had him on. He's a Freemason. He's like, but he's a great example of a Freemason, because he's very knowledgeable, but he's not like some evil Freemason. He's just like a normal dude. You know what I mean? He's like, he just knows knowledge,
Yeah, no, I mean, like, that was the first time I ever talked to Robert. He's a really cool guy. But like I said, I mean, that's the thing. But press him on Freemasonic knowledge, and he probably won't be as liberal you know, and talking about the stuff that they do. You know what I'm saying? Like they won't. I know he's written books about it, but a lot of these guys are against talking about what they like. One of my co-hosts is also a Freemason, and I'll sometimes we'll be talking about Freemasonry, and I'll ask him a question, and he'll just stay shut. But the silence is deafening, because the silence either kind of sort of confirms what you're asking them about, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, what's this about? Is it because of this, this, and this? And if they don't say anything back, you can kind of infer like, okay, then I was probably spot on, but they can't say that you were spot on because they would be breaking their oath. But again, that to each their own. I'm not telling anyone how they should live their life. I'm just saying, from my experience, I've had people reach out who regret it, and they're, you know, they're now they feel trapped or whatever it is. And I'm like, hey, you know, this is dude, I research this sort of stuff, and there's so many things that it could possibly be. Like, when you think you have it figured out, and that's part of the occult. When you think you have it figured out, it like literally morphs in front of you. Like, it'll change. Like, I'll be reading, you know, this book here that I read 2 or 3 years ago, and then I'll pick up a book that I picked up yesterday, and that book that I picked up yesterday will connect so many dots of that other book that I read 3 years ago. It's like, oh, all that other stuff that made no sense to me, I completely understand what was being said in that first book from 3 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Like that, like that's how the connections work sometimes. Like, oh, that's what that meant. And it's like, okay, well, if would I have known the same thing from the book that I read yesterday if I wouldn't have read the book from 3 years ago? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, would I've been able to figure it out? It's like, I don't know. But that's just me, man. And I enjoy learning. I've always been like a history buff. Now
So
I
you
know
tend to be a little bit more skeptical a little bit, it
a
seems
hundred
like,
percent,
though.
100%, bro. Like, that's the whole thing with the like, people
I
ask
think
me all the
that's healthy,
time.
though. You know, that's
Yeah, it
all.
is. And that's the kind of person I am, though, bro. And I'll tell people, like, people hit me up all the time, like, yo, so what do you think? I'm like, what do I think about is the homunculus for real or for now? It's like, me personally, you know, out of all the hours that I've talked about it, do I believe in the homunculus? Absolutely. Yes. Do I think it's real? Yes. And the reason for why I think it's real is because of XYZ. You know, there's actual chimeras being created now, especially now in 2023. We know that there's test tube babies, which is essentially maybe not an alchemical homunculus, but again, an artificially grown person within a vessel or whatever it may be. You know what I'm saying? So these concepts are not just science fiction. They are real things. Now, they've just changed a little bit. Names have changed and concepts have changed over time, because we're not going to, you know, and maybe these alchemists did figure out the secret of artificial life, you know, in the 16th, 17th century, whenever it was Paracelsus. You know what I'm saying?
Is
Like,
that like when you did the video on ancient CRISPR technology? Is that
so that was on the Cave podcast. Shout out to those guys. He likes the homunculus too, and he was asking me about, like, he was asking me about my collaboration with Mind Unveiled. And Mind Unveiled, he's heavy into like old world, I guess, Tartaria, and he's like, hey, the homunculus tech is something that they use to populate all these empty cities, like these Cabbage Patch babies and all these different things. Like, there was incubator babies at these world fairs. It's like, well, were they part the children on those orphan trains? Were those children homunculi, right? Or not? Like, let's lose the term homunculus. Let's say artificially created peoples, right? And like, that was his whole thing. And he really took that concept and broke down the Voynich manuscript and broke down all these other artworks that might be hinting at this lost ancient CRISPR cloning technology. Like, we see these depictions of these gods being grown. Like, in ancient, you can see, like, you know, little people being held by bigger people. It's like, were those, right, the Anunnaki that created, you know, the human race? Like, there's stories about it since the beginning, bro. In the book of Genesis, like, God
yeah,
formed
I heard
man
you
had a
say
God.
that like the Anunnaki basically made a homunculi when they made us, right?
Think
If
about
that's
the
true.
think about so if you follow the Sumerian lore, the Anunnaki lore, it was that the Anunnaki wanted to mine for gold, and they didn't want to do it themselves. But again, think about it. This ancient, super advanced race of entities. They wanted to mine for gold, so therefore they created this hominid from the womb of one of the Anunnaki, and then the seed of this primate or whatever, put it together, and they made humans to mine for gold. Well, if you look at the concept of like a leprechaun does what? He's guarding gold. Like he goes and part of
Yeah.
the homunculus lore is that these entities, not only will they divinate to you, they'll reveal, they'll tell you the future, they'll reveal secrets for you, whatever secret, and they'll find treasures for you. So we have this idea, and if you follow the Voynich manuscript lore concerning Edward Kelly, it was said that he summoned an entity or creature, a spiritual creature, that led him to find the Voynich manuscript and the remnants of this old building somewhere over in Europe, I guess. So it's like, are there actual elementals that you can invoke that'll assist you? If you look at the concept of like aliens, well, aliens, they were similar to elementals, right? Elementals like fairies, earth element, gnomes, undines, sylphs, like all those elementals, they were very sexual with humankind, right? Like, and if you take the Genesis story of the Watchers, right? The Watchers that were inserting themselves into the daughters of men. Well, the reason that they wanted to copulate with human women was because if they're able to marry a human woman, they're able to form a soul, a mortal soul, like a soul that they don't have because they're soulless. And these elementals, again, if you look at the whole UFO concept and abductee concept, they're very sexual in nature. They're probing people, up their butts. They're taking the semen. There's stories of, I don't know if you read Jacques Vallée's The Passport to Magonia, where he's talking about people being impregnated by the Commonwealth or whatever he calls it. So it's like elementals that they've been talking about, that Paracelsus was talking about for, since the 16th century, is the same concept as a UFO abductee. It's like the same thing, except what? It has a different name. It has a different, maybe, a collective egregore image to it. It's a little gray man, little green man, whatever it is. Like maybe that's what's more. They're trying to morph that same thing in the collective. They're messing with that. It's like, for what reason? I don't know. But the point being that this phenomenon is very similar to the abductee, and the whole Grush guy, bro. It's like, if you're a whistleblower, why are you getting clearance to say what you want to say? A whistleblower is going to say whatever you want. That's the whole thing of it. It's like, oh, he's a whistleblower that has to get everything approved by who? If you're a whistleblower,
I've wondered that too. That makes sense, because like, why does he? He's only approved to say certain things, but he's not allowed to say other things. Like,
he was just
what
on
are the?
Rogan,
I want to know, what are the other things that he can't say? You know what I mean? Like, what?
Dude, it's all. I think. Listen, the only way you're going to convince me is they need to land in front of the White House, and we can all gather around. They need to land in front of the White House and whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm done hearing story. I love stories, and that's the thing, bro. And that's the aspect of human nature. We all love a good campfire story. We all love, and this is why people love podcasts. We're talking about experiences. We're talking about real things.
It's fun,
It's fun. Oh, dude, I love it. It's fun. But like, when it comes to these sort of things where they're literally causing divide within a community and people are losing their minds over it, it's time for the real money. It's time for the money shot. Like, I talk to people who talk about cryptids and all that. I'm like, you have all this tech. You go out in the field with all this tech. Where's the evidence, brother?
Show us. Yeah. And then, they'll say, well, Bigfoot's elusive. And I'm like, well, they can't be that elusive. Like, unless we're really dealing with like interdimensional creatures that know how to stay away from humans. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of why somebody wouldn't get a picture. But then again, you would still think that, like, out of all the humans on this earth, someone would be able to capture a picture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's weird. Like, there's a guy in my area. His name's Stan Gordon. He's had a UFO hotline open since 1969. His phone rings off the hook. Like, and it's just people telling them that they have experiences, and they're not looking for fame. So it makes me think, well, what are these people seeing though? That's the thing where it gets me. It's like, what are these people seeing me? Because like if they're not looking for attention, they have to be seeing something. So what is it that they're seeing? I don't know. You know what I mean? And that's where it gets into like, is it interdimensional? Is it like, or do you think that, I mean, do you think like, as far as like the paranormal goes, that the veil is thinning, or do you think that it's all, or what do you think?
Well, dude, I mean, part of that Fritz Springmeier book, in that book, he talks about directed energy weapons that can make people feel like they're being sodomized, sodomized, right? So sodomy through directed energy weapons. He also talks about how in there's tech where part of these experiences of people who have abductions is actually their programmer programming them, and their psyches being fractured. And the reason that they remember it the way that they remember is because they've been programmed to see it the way that they saw it. So it's like, what are you even supposed to believe? That would completely throw out the whole UFO alien agenda, like actual little green men, if it's all, this handler. But then the
It
problem
would be it would be more of the secret space program though, because that's where we're getting a lot of this stuff. It's the secret space program experiencers that think that they have like that, but they've actually been under, they usually, a lot of these times these witnesses have been under like mind control. So that would make sense what you're saying, right?
well,
Like it's like
that's Fritz.
they're
That's what I
remembering.
read. Yeah, that's what I read in the book. Again, I'm just highlighting like what it could, if it is all fake and gay. But then it's like you have Greer talking about how, and I did a video on this. I did like 2 videos on this where he admitted to that some of these entities that are abducting and because bro, there are things that are actual like conspiracies. For example, like cow mutilations. That's super weird.
It
The cow
is. I don't know what
crop
that is.
circles. Yeah, crop circles. Like a lot of people don't know about crop circles. Crop circles are super bizarre. It's like those are things that like, yo, that's crazy. Okay. Like I
Yeah,
don't
and
know.
those crop circles aren't just like Jimmy and Johnny
No.
Snow stomping down corn, because there's like radiation effects to the
Yeah.
corn and stuff. There's like and the cattle mutilations, it's weird. Like there's blood drawn out of the animal. All the blood's usually drawn out of the anus or the eyes or something, and they can tell that, and it looks like it's been dropped 30 feet off the
Yes.
ground. There's a lot of strange to it. I don't understand it. I
That
can't.
that that was the creepiest one for me, where it's like, oh yeah, also their legs are broken. Well, why are their legs? Because they've been dropped. Like, whoa, what? That's wild. And the animals don't touch it like after the fact. That there's definitely stuff that we can't explain. The paranormal. Do I think that there's paranormal? Well, there's paranormal for a reason, and this is again why I have a podcast, because there are legitimate things that we can't explain. Now, are they actual lizard people who shapeshift and are part of the, I don't, and they drink people's blood? I don't know. Like that you're kind of
Yeah,
kind
me
of put
too.
kind of over embellishing it there, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I'm open to talking about it. And I'm open to talking about it. Like, it's cool. It sounds, sounds awesome, whatever. Metal, dude, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it's like I can't prove that to you. I can't. And it's like the same thing with the homunculus. I can't prove to you that these dudes were actually creating homunculus in a lab, but I can show you some of the evidence of how they're doing that today. Like, does that count? Or is like, no, it doesn't count because it was only back then. Well, what if they had access to the same stuff that they had back? They could recreate the the process or whatever it is, like the whole thing. But
Well, it's like, you remember Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, where they were using witchcraft through technology and they were putting it out through the TVs.
yeah,
I mean, it could be something like that with the homunculus. They could be using ancient rituals to produce cloning technology today. So they're mixing technology with witchcraft.
well,
I just thought about that.
didn't you see the digital twins thing at CERN, that they were working with digital twins? And it's like it plays into this whole idea of, I don't know if you've ever heard about the world sentient simulation, where they're running a and this is why social media is dangerous. This is why technology, and I'm not like, it's cliche like Terminator, iRobot type of thing. Like, no, no, no. Like, this is why, because we are voluntarily, the occulticide. Okay, for 1 second, the occulticide. We are voluntarily, they say that a vampire can't come into your house unless you invite him in, like, please come in, right? And then they're able to come in. we voluntarily give our information on these social media platforms. We give them all the information. Some people share way too much information on social media platforms, right?
Yeah.
The government has a simulation that they're running with tabloids, with census, with a whole bunch of different information. So think about this. If they're able to feed this world century simulation with global crises and all these different aspects of reality, whatever that may be, and what if, for 1 second, let's take the homunculus concept, the occult aside for 1 second, and they have this digital version of you, of Robert, in there. He's got a podcast too, and all this other stuff in that world, in that simulation. Well, what happens if, now we bring the occult in, right? The golden bough, where it's like sympathetic magic. Well, whatever, that's still a part of you. Like it's all it's a version of you. So therefore, if something happens to that version of you in there, is that going to affect you out here? Is it like the Matrix, where when Neo is getting his ass kicked in the Matrix, his body's feeling it? You know what I'm saying? Like he's getting beat up in real life. If he dies in the Matrix, you become untethered, like you're dead in the real world. So it's like they take these like that those are real things. We know that the placebo effect is a real thing. We know that people will heal themselves by taking a placebo of a medicine. Like, okay, well, I'm healed now. It was just a placebo. It was just saline or whatever it was. That what happened? Like your mind caused a biological reaction with that. Like that's real. What is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is that? It's like, were you making it up this whole time? What was, did your mind cure what consciousness? Like all these concepts. So
You want to hear something crazy? This girl told I was doing a show on dreams, and some girl told me that her daughter was having a dream about being bit by rats, and when she woke up, there was actual bite marks on her. That makes me think that our dreams like a parallel reality, or was she actually getting bit by a rat and or bit by something and she didn't know it while she was sleeping, or and it just projected in her dream, or did the dream, was it so real that it caused, is it another reality that it's causing, like that's a trip to me. Like that's as much of as like a shroom trip to me. Dreams are, they basically are. I mean, it's strange, like
well, think about it. How many times haven't you heard in your dream? And this happens to me regularly. I'm not going to say every night, but it happened to me before quite a few times, where you're in your dream and you hear a noise, you hear something going off, and the whole time was your alarm clock in reality, whatever that is, going off, but you were hearing it. You were hearing something in your dream. Like you were experiencing something in this other realm, this other space, right? It's like, well, yeah, absolutely. I think that there's definitely something that goes on. I do think that maybe perhaps Kenneth Grant talks about this, where it's like like you were there, but you weren't really there. It's like, what part of you was there present in these dreams, and whatever's happening, sometimes you wake up feeling more tired than you are when you went to sleep. It's like, were you jogging in the astral realm or something? Like, were you working out in the astral realm? It's like, that's why you woke up more tired than you were when you went to sleep. So it's like, there's something to that. It's an altered state of consciousness is what it is, right? You're in a different state of consciousness when you're in deep sleep or whatever it is. Or even when you intake substances, like you're in a different altered state of consciousness. Maybe you're able to see things. Like, I don't know about you, bro, but when I partake in the, Mary Jane or whatever, there's something about it, bro, where I can tell when people are full of shit. Like, I don't know. It's weird, dude. Like I can see through people, and not like a weird woo. Was like everything is, and I might be paranoid, but like I don't believe anything anyone, like I'll be watching a video and I'm like, man, this like she could be telling the saddest story. I'm like, yo, this lady's full of shit. And it's like, I don't know if that's the paranoia setting in, or if it's like me seeing through like everything is like a comedy sketch
My
when
my my thing is like shrooms. I like shrooms a lot, and I like the amanita ones that are legal, and I like the magic ones that are. I like the psilocybin ones too, like because I tend to get a little bit. I still do THC. I like THC too, but I get a little bit paranoid with it. So it depends on the strain. But like with shrooms, I don't get paranoid at all, and I'm able to like. It seems like I'm able to see through the veil. It's weird, man. Like it's like I really feel like they say they're magic for a reason because DMT, I did DMT too. That was a little bit too extreme. Well, I just saw geometric patterns. I was telling Chris from Forbidden Knowledge News about this. I mean, I've heard stories where people actually break through and they say they went to other dimensions or they feel like that, but that didn't happen for me. I just saw geometric patterns. But I've had more profound experiences on magic mushrooms than DMT. If you get some really good THC, it could do the same thing. I feel like, I
yeah,
don't know.
I've never done DMT. I was gonna extract my own, and I never ended up doing it. I have same with the occult. I have the utmost respect for it. Not that I don't believe in it, but I do respect it. And the same thing with psychedelics. My first ever mushroom trip, I thought I was dying, and I mean, looking back at it, I was having an ego death, and it was like one of the worst experiences I ever had, and I haven't gone back since. And I was listening to Terrence McKenna this weekend or this morning, maybe. I don't know. And he was talking about how, right, what if experiencing. So Philip K. Dick talks about how God's intervention, again, this is for the sake of conversation, God's intervention in our reality is on the same concept as like an extraterrestrial invasion, essentially. Is like there's an outside force, right? An outside power peeking his head into our reality. Like that's extraterrestrial, and they like there's an outside force that we don't know what it is intervening. You know what I mean? And then you have Terrence McKenna talking about how maybe perhaps when you ingest a piece of the mushroom, you are then connected to the knowledge of whatever that thing had, right? And that's just eerily similar to like the Eucharist, where you're eating from the body of Christ. I'm not saying that God is a mushroom, that's a whole different podcast. But the concept of, if once you invite this thing in, this entity, if it is God or a psychedelic trip or whatever it is, like, are you automatically a part and have some sort of like symbiotic relationship, I guess, of it. Like, I'm not gonna call it a parasite, but it's like things change, right? You see people change when they when they when they get religious, for lack of a better term. It's like, are they inviting something in that's changing their biology? Because I've seen, like myself, I was involved in the church for a long time. I've seen miracles, right? And I'm not calling God or whatever a parasite or an entity or like some sort of mind virus, if you will. But it's like when you accept God or deity or whatever, insert your God of choice here, you're healed sometimes. Like I've seen that personally, and I'm going to talk about it from like a Christian perspective. So that this is just from my personal experience. I've seen that happen. I've seen miracles being performed in front of me, and I've seen people quite literally be healed in front of me. It's like, what was that? Is that again back to the whole placebo effect? Like, did they manifest that themselves? Is there this extraterrestrial intervenence or whatever you would call it, interference in this reality? Was that what healed that person? And if it's able to do that, then what else is it able to, like, like Philip K. Dick talks about, like if you could capture God in a bottle or something, it's like you would want to keep God in a bottle. You know what I'm saying? Like you would
Well,
want to keep this
that's
thing
what
in a
it's the whole idea with the homunculus, right? If you summon it correctly, supposedly it'll do your bidding. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's part of let's homunculus is a little bit too woo for some people, but you're absolutely right. It's about acquiring godlike powers from your alchemical creation, but it goes further than that, bro, because we're talking about, right, Paracelsus passed it down. The guy who invented porcelain in, I think, the 18th century, whatever it was, he stumbled across porcelain by accident. He was actually trying to transmute and do the magnum opus. He was actually trying to turn base metals into gold. Okay. And from that, he was able to develop like commercial porcelain that we know today. And involved with him, I can't recall his name, involved with that same guy was Leibniz, Gottfried Leibniz, which is the guy of the father of binary code, right? The ones and zeros in our computer, who was also obsessed with Rene Descartes' work. Now, the interesting part of Leibniz was that he wrote about monadology, the monad. And essentially what monadology was breaking God down into a substance. Now, that to me sounds very homunc-esque, where you want to break what, you know, the concept of a homunculus is to acquire magical or godlike powers from your creation. Well, what if we skip all that alchemical and just try to create God in a lab? I mean, like, try to create, right? You hear about CERN creating the God particle, whatever it is, and it's like, that's going to prove the existence of a different dimension. Well, this dude was quite literally trying to break God down into a substance. Now, sounds very heretical, because I don't think God is a substance. I think that he is, right, the source of everything that we see today. But this is how these guys were thinking. And now, wow, we're using the technology that he kind of helped pioneer and, you know, and pave the way for. Same thing with Charles Babbage, the father of the modern computer. He was like, yo, I don't believe in the devil, so I'm going to do this blood ceremony. I'm going to try and summon the devil. It's like, and then he also believed the whole concept of like God being a sort of substance thing that you can like create, right? And then the whole thing with, you know, if you have a perfect enough computer, right? Let's think for 1 second, right? Let's say that we are vessels for consciousness or a soul or whatever it is that you want to call it. If we build a perfect enough computer, will God put a soul in it? Like, what, right? If we build something so well, like there's this story about this Kobo Daishi, which is this old, I believe, Japanese like mystic guy. He helped establish a religion over there, and with the Taoists and all these guys. And there's a story about him, how he was painting these dragons outside this temple, and he was painting them so perfect. He was painting them so perfect that when he laid the last piece of paint on this dragon, on these dragons, they came to life. So he quickly took some other paint and painted over it because it was too perfect. All right, the dragon came so it's like the same thing with us. The homunculus, like the homunculus is a weird thing, because to some people that would be blasphemous to create life. Well, only God, what God giveth, God taketh. So only God can create life, and only God can take it away. Well, what happens when you take that upon yourself? Like, that's blasphemy, right? That's blasphemous in a sense. That's heretical in a sense. So for some people, the homunculus back then was like, that was the magnum opus. That was the, wow, I created life. This is wild. But then to some other people, it was like, well, yeah, you created the counterfeit version of what God did for real good, because the part of the homunculus, like, they can't talk, they're kind of funny looking, right? They're kind of deformed, like the golem can't talk, right? Like, he's like,
Yeah.
not perfect, because God, like Frankenstein was like this abomination, essentially, is what it was. Like, and that to some people, the homunculus was like this great creation, like, oh, well, you did it. And then some other people are like, well, you just created a counterfeit version of what God had already done. It's like, are you really proud of that? Like, are you really proud of making like a great value version of a human? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not as good as the real thing. So again, these are just concepts that I think about, where they kind of, if you really trace it back, it's like the Wikipedia game that they played with Homunculus. Homunculus is 3 degrees of separation from any major topic. Somebody ran the numbers, and they played the Wikipedia game, and the Homunculus was like 2 degrees away from like any major topic, from like Taylor Swift, Barack Obama, like all the major, like the Homunculus was always like right there. So again, if I had to guess, I would say that like people in power, you know, people talk about NPCs or like clones. If anything, they're homunculi. Like they're and again, they are people who were bred and put in these positions of power because of their families. So not an alchemically grown homunculus, but maybe they aligned their birthday to a certain astrological alignment, certain time. They did a C-section, took them out just in time. So that person, boom, is a talisman of some sort. But they're just a regular person. Okay. If anything, I mean, it's been proven that all the presidents were related, no, except for like one of them. I mean, that right back to the guy who
Yeah.
like wrote the Magna Carta or some crazy thing like that. Like, that's not a conspiracy. That's been proven. Like, that's, you can show me the proof. You can show me the link.
Even Obama and Trump.
Yeah.
Like,
And I've talked about a lot of crazy stuff. It's like, well, are you going to nitpick what you want to believe or not? It's like, well, that's why I'm like you, bro. I'm a skeptic too, like 100%. Like, people assume that just because we talk about these sort of things that we believe all of them. It's like, no, a lot of the things that I talk about, I research because I'm trying to figure out like if it was a real thing or not. You know what I mean? And it's like, I
yeah.
draw the line at some things, but I'll keep an open mind. You know, like I'll keep an open mind. I know that there are a lot of things of our history that have been occulted from us. Do I think that we will ever know the truth? I don't think so, bro. Like, I
I
don't
don't think
think
so either. I think it's like I think there's a lot more mystery though in the world, and I think that's what makes it fun, you know?
yeah. And that's what draws people in. Like, a lot of people like, well, I said earlier, people love a good story, especially when it's like, I think that's why like cryptid podcast and podcasts that have people's experiences. I think that's why, because people can live. Like, I don't know about you. I like to listen to like Bigfoot stories and Dogman stories and all that stuff, and like kind of sort of live through that person, right? Like through that person's experience. Like,
I watch that show Dogman Encounters. It's really good. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like with Vic Cundiff or whatever, where he has a different experiencer every
mhm.
week.
Yeah, I've
That's
heard it
that's
before.
that's interesting. Yeah. Like it's well, I don't know. Can you tell everybody where to find you? Thank you so much for doing this, man. It was awesome talking to you. Like this was I could probably talk to you forever. This was awesome.
Yeah, dude, you can find me tjojp.com. I'm on YouTube, anywhere you get the one-on-one podcast. I'm also on any podcast platform, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. And yeah, I'll share this on my channel, bro. Where can people find you I enjoy
Same
talking to you,
typical
bro.
skeptic podcast everywhere. You know, I'm on Rumble, I'm on Rumble and YouTube the most, and then I'm on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. And thanks, man. This was awesome. I always enjoyed talking to you on. This was great.
Yeah, definitely, dude. Thank you for having me on again.
All right, until next time.